Welcome back to a breakdown of YouTube's first pitch deck. They got an investment from Sequoia Capital for $2.5 million, and they used a simple 10-slide pitch deck to make it all happen. We're going to break that down and some historical background on how the company got started. But before we dive in today, I just wanted to note the pitch deck is in the description. There's also a link to my Calendly. If you want your deck reviewed, you want to do some business consulting, hop on a call with me. Let's talk about it in more detail. Would love to get to know any of you, and leave a comment in the description here below of a company that you want to see me break down next. Let's get right into it. So today we're diving into one of the most impactful pitch decks in Silicon Valley venture capital history. This is YouTube, who raised $3.5 million from Sequoia Capital in 2005 with a 10-slide deck in black and white. We're going to dive into some of the things they did right, go through a little bit of history, and some of the lessons that we can learn throughout the process. So going into it, first off, you're going to get this broadcast yourself term here. This is all part of the narrative. When you're raising money for a company, when you're building a business, when you're getting people to buy into the vision as a founder, you need to sell the narrative. It's about building a community. It's about building more than just a tech product. It's launching an entire brand that's going to make a global impact. YouTube did that in terms of sharing video. As you can see, the first slide that they go right into is the company purpose. We see mission statements, things like this be used all the time in pitch decks. For them, it's just pretty simple. It's to be the primary outlet for user-generated content. Think about how often those terms are used today. This is nearly 20 years ago. That's how ahead of the curve they were when all of this was going out, because at the time, there was no options to do this at scale. So they start off with their company purpose, really trying to sell that narrative as they move into the problem. And the problem at the time was that there was no place to share video. You couldn't do it via email or from sending from person to person because video files are bulky. They still are today. On top of that, there's just this isolated file-to-file transfer. There was no library to track all of this stuff. And I think this is a great problem slide. It really helps understand what the problem is, where the market lies, and it's general enough that we can understand why others would care about this. They go right into the solution from there, talking about what they've built. They've got the tech in terms of the back end that is flash video based. We don't see that anymore. And they first are talking about the consumers, what they're doing. And as you can see here in their solution, because of the fact that they've already launched their product at the time of fundraising, which was about November 2005, their platform came out in May of 2005. They were able to do this subtle flex here, which was serving content to millions of viewers. This is only one of a few points throughout this deck where they really try to quantify the value here, but I think that it really helps drive home the point for them. This is not just an idea for a solution. No, this is one that already has millions of viewers and corporate clients, because their first viral video, which happened just a month or two before this pitch actually closed them their financing, was Nike and a soccer advertisement with Ronaldinho. They also then re-highlight the community in the third bullet point here. Again, that community builds a sticky platform that users are going to want to use. Market size, everybody. This is a strong solution to a problem that a lot of people probably recognized at the time, as well as everybody makes content today. Creating a sharing platform for that is good. They talk about the current solutions on the market in terms of digital recording technology being pretty rudimentary, and how everybody has broadband internet now, so this shouldn't be a hurdle for people to communicate and share. I think this slide is the one that is the weakest in the deck. They probably could have also tried to quantify deeper what actually the market is for this, but clearly it didn't matter a whole lot. Into competition. This is a slide that I think a lot of founders sometimes struggle with, because you don't really want to acknowledge that there's other people doing what you're doing. Sometimes it can be a little bit self-conscious, that you don't want to potentially turn an investor on to a different company or acknowledge that anyone else is doing things differently than you. But on the other side of the coin, the reality is that Having competition means you're probably doing something right and that the market is validated by others getting involved in the space. Are there other investors? Are there other users and customers of other products that demonstrate the market size that you can potentially dominate and capture? Not to mention, recognizing your competitors can be a great opportunity to demonstrate why you have a moat, why you have a competitive advantage against them. And also, as you can see here, they recognized Google Video as a potential competitor who then eventually became their acquirer. In just about 18 months from when they raised this money, they actually were acquired by Google for $1.6 billion. They recognized their competitor here, but potentially competitors could be acquirers if you do it better than they know they could do it on their own. And into the product development, this is the biggest slide talking about what they've actually built. And yet again, you see them leading it off with community. For them, it was all about building that flywheel of having people that want to create content, having people that want to view content, and the more people that view it, the more people that create, and begins this positive feedback loop. That was the biggest thing for them. This is aligned with their narrative, which is all about allowing people to share video content. This isn't about having the best technical infrastructure. As we see a lot of times, the best tech doesn't always win. Having a really strong community behind it was just as important then as it is today. We're seeing that ripple across every industry, and how building strong communities is the best way to monetize your platform and to defend against other solutions on the market. They've got sales and distribution. This is talking about revenue. And I think this is really interesting because they hit the nail right on the head. This is how you know this is a strong product. They knew advertising was going to be the best way to do it. Now, perhaps you could argue that that's because that's exactly what television was doing and they were trying to replace that, but advertising became the ultimate business model and still is for YouTube. I think the interesting thing here is that they had a few other bullet points like charging members for premium features and charging viewers for premium content, which we very rarely saw, especially in those early days. Today, they've got YouTube TV, they've got some premium features, but I'm sure that's a very small portion of the revenue that YouTube generates. That was never a focus for them. So while they acknowledged that those are opportunities that they could take advantage of, it never really was something that they fully capitalized on, perhaps because they didn't want to cannibalize their users or isolate them from the platform, or perhaps it wasn't a vertical they explored very much because advertising was just so successful. Then they went into the team. All three of these co-founders were all ex-PayPal employees. They all worked at PayPal together. It also helps that the venture capital firm Sequoia Capital that gave them the $3.5 million check for this financing round, their partner that led this deal actually was the CFO for PayPal. So there was a long-standing relationship between these individuals and their investor. I'm sure that helped the deal get through the finish line. And so all three of these guys, very active. They've got strong backgrounds and they knew each other. This was only a couple of months that they had launched the product since then it had then raised. And again, it only took them about 12 to 18 months to actually sell the company for over $1 billion. Finally, the last slide in their deck is metrics. Another very light slide considering they had plenty of metrics to be able to measure. This platform was live. They were receiving millions of views and users across the platform, but instead they go with a totally gangster line, which is just, we've already overtaken all existing competition and now we're the dominant player. So this is why it's not a bad thing to show your competition, to show who else is in the market, especially when you can point to it and say, yeah, we've already overtaken those competitors. We've already done this. We're already the market leader. I think this is fascinating and, as I said, pretty gangster because you're really inclined to want to show off all your metrics, show off how great everything is. For them, it was like, nope, if you believe in this vision, we're the market leader. We've never raised money before. We're trying to capitalize to bring this to scale in the market, and we're going to do that properly. It seemed like Sequoia had no problems doing so. The other thing that I think is interesting to note about this metric slide is it's the last slide in the deck. There's no thank you slide. There's no contact slide. This is just metrics. So as we leave it, as we're finalizing our last thoughts, it's just focused on this metric slide, you're really driving home the point that you want everyone to focus on and you want to leave everyone with. And I think that this is a great thing to do when you have a pitch deck. Make sure that last slide is something really impactful that you want investors, viewers, customers, anyone interested to be stuck with, because it's likely the one that gets the most airplay. As you can see right here, it's just the last one stuck on the screen, whether you're pitching live an event, whether you're pitching live in person, whether you're on Zoom. You always end up talking a little bit more, answering questions, going back and forth with this last slide up. You want to use that real estate properly to show off the thing that you really want to drive home your point. As I said, YouTube had a 10 slide deck. It's black and white. There's not a whole lot of metrics or revenue projections here, and yet it didn't stop them from raising $3.5 million in November of 2005. They then turned around in March of 2006, raised another $8 million. That was a follow-on round also from Sequoia, alongside another investor called Artis Ventures. And so Sequoia and Artis put in another 8. They raised $11.5 million total between the two rounds, just to be acquired by Google in October of 2006, only about a year from when they were pitching this deck to Sequoia. Fascinating stuff. If you enjoyed this, we're going to be going through a lot of different pitch decks of some of the greatest companies, walking through what they did right, what has changed in the industry. If you want to submit a deck, if you want to schedule a call and talk a little bit more about your business, I give a lot of startup consulting advice. I work with hundreds of different companies on things just like this: strategy, roadmap, launch, go-to-market plans. So however I can be helpful, I got links in the description. You can hit me up at Kyle Sonlin on Twitter, or find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you see fit, and we'll talk to you in the next video.